Well, one of the things we want to cover here, because like we were trying to say earlier, and there's a lot of thoughts that I've had here, a lot of thoughts we've all had and we all wanted to share. And, I think there's so many things going on, and sometimes it's difficult to get all your thoughts out. And certainly we only have a certain amount of time here. But, one of the things we were trying to say earlier is that the numbers that we see to date don't appear to support the hysteria that we're seeing. So why is that? Is it just overblown hysteria, and is it some kind of media echo chamber? I know there's a lot of people who think that. I've seen them posting on Facebook and other places telling everybody to just calm down. This is no big deal. At the same time, there are some actions that the government is taking, and one wonders why they would be doing that in a hysterical fashion. I mean, we've even seen people in President Trump's own administration, like Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's sort of basically running the response on this, who said some pretty controversial statements, such as, that we're considering a national shutdown and that a domestic travel ban is not out of the question. I suppose you may have heard that we banned incoming travel from Europe now for what was about close to a month, not quite a month actually, and that's going to be, I think, through April 10th. And then they just added the United Kingdom and Ireland to the list of banned countries as well. But there was something that Dr. Anthony Fauci said that I wanted to just quote, and he basically said, if you just leave the virus to its own devices, it will go way up like we've seen in Italy. That's not going to happen if we do what we're attempting to do and are doing. The way you get ahead of it is that, as I try to explain to people, that I want people to assume that we're overreacting, because if it looks like you're overreacting, you're probably doing the right thing. So that was Dr. Fauci on Face the Nation yesterday. So it does look like they're overreacting based on the numbers. And when we look at the numbers from some past pandemics, we're not even close. If we go back to the bubonic plague that took place in the 14th century, between 1347 and 1351, it apparently, and this is just an estimation, killed about 200 million people in Europe, which they say was maybe half the population of the continent, which in and of itself sort of gives you some interesting thoughts, because there were 400 million people in Europe back in the 1300s. That's about the size of Europe today. So that's sort of interesting. But 200 million people estimated killed by the Black Death. The smallpox epidemic of 1520 killed apparently about 56 million people. And again, that's basically an estimate, because we wouldn't have had the ability to count. But let's talk about one we've all heard about more recently, and that's the Spanish flu epidemic that spread worldwide, that this particular pandemic and this coronavirus has been declared to be a pandemic by the World Health Organization. The Spanish flu epidemic killed an estimated 40 to 50 million people worldwide in 1918 to 1919. And, of course, that was before the development of antibiotics. Now, antibiotics primarily treat bacterial infections. The flu is a virus, but a lot of times when you have a bacterial or a viral infection, you also have a corresponding infection of the other type. So in this case, if you have a viral infection, a lot of times you also get a follow-on bacterial infection as a result. But let's also look at the HIV and AIDS pandemic. That's killed an estimated 25 to 35 million people and has been going on since about 1981. Other flus that we've had in this country that have been a big deal, the Hong Kong flu killed about 1 million people worldwide, and I think it was about 100,000 in this country, and that was in the late 60s, 1968 to 1970. And for everybody who says that you can't name these viruses, that this shouldn't be called the Wuhan virus or the Wuhan flu, that somehow that's racist or it's anti-Chinese, that's just simply not the pattern that we've followed in the past. Think about the name, the Spanish flu. It didn't even come from Spain, and they got stuck with the name, the Spanish flu. Right? You've got the Asian flu, killed 1.1 million people in the late 50s. You got the Hong Kong flu, killed about 1 million people in the late 60s. How about the swine flu? That happened back during President Obama's administration, and killed worldwide about 200,000 people are the estimates. And, is it the pig's fault? I mean, we called it the swine flu. That's not fair. I mean, I think some of this stuff about what you name these things is a little bit silly. But just flipping back to the more important issue at hand, and that is that the deaths from this novel coronavirus, and it's actually called, the virus itself is SARS-CoV-2. So severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. So it's apparently very close to the SARS epidemic that occurred, and it wasn't a huge epidemic, but that occurred back in the early 2000s. The viruses are very similar. So this is the SARS-CoV-2, and it leads to the infectious disease called COVID-19. So the virus itself is not COVID-19. I just find it interesting how they've been forcing all these strange names on us about this, and everybody seems to be using different ones. But I looked at the CDC website yesterday because a client of mine's actually been drafting a contract to go in and clean places up for this, because that's, a big new business. You've got nursing homes, you've got cruise ships, you've got hospitals, you've got all kinds of places that now want specialized providers to be able to come in and provide cleaning and disinfecting services to hopefully remove this virus from the facilities. So one of my clients is saying, hey, I need you to put together a contract so that we can now start to go and do this, because our phones are ringing off the hook for this particular service, and our existing contracts don't really line up with what we're trying to do here. So, as yesterday, always on call, Morgan gets on the computer and starts learning all the specific terminology and some of the latest science that you want to know. But these relatively low numbers are leading to closings all over the place, and we wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about some of those closings because it's pretty severe, and it makes you think, gosh, for 5,000 deaths worldwide. I mean, do they know something that we don't know? Because this doesn't look like the scale of pandemic that we've had in the past. So either that's coming unless we do something really severe right now, which is what Dr. Anthony Fauci is essentially saying, or everybody's overreacting for purposes of trying to sink the Trump administration.
Do you feel very challenged because oftentimes there's a philosophy that if the masses are going one way, you should be going the other. And right now, we seem to be more of a split. You've got half the people, whatever percentage, large percentage of people who are saying, don't worry about this, it's overblown. And then you've got another half, and like we said, in leadership, in the media, that are saying, this is just absolutely deadly, horrific, be scared, be fearful. So you don't know which way to go. Because you can't tell where the masses are at this point.
Right. And I have to say, I feel bad for these people who work in a lot of these industries that are being closed. And we're talking both domestically and mainly in Europe. The news that we're getting right now, Europe is the other area that's got a lot of closings. But here domestically, just some of what we've seen, the governor of Ohio closed all bars and restaurants for, I think it was at least 2 weeks. And he did that on only a couple of hours' notice last night at 9 p.m. Now, a lot of people eat in bars and restaurants. So now where are they? And a lot of people work in bars and restaurants. So where are the people who eat there going to get their food now? And where are the people who work there going to get the money? Most of these people don't have a huge savings account built up so that they can just withstand, let me just take a couple of months off work for a crisis. I'm ready to go and I've got my food ready and everything else. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck in this country. And now you're cutting off their paycheck. And what are they going to do? How are they going to survive?
You make a great point, because there are also people who, like you said, they get all their meals out. They eat all their food out of their home. Don't you think they need a little bit more than immediate? I mean, you can't have such a short notification that that's the case. How are you going to feed yourself?
That's right. Well, you go to the grocery store like we've talked about, and stuff is not there to be purchased. The food and supplies are not there, and that's going to lead into another topic. But let me just cover some more of these closings. Illinois, the state of Illinois, the entire state, they have closed all bars and restaurants for 2 weeks from the 16th to the 30th of March. And, of course, that could be extended. In Hoboken, New Jersey, they've enacted a curfew from the hours of 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. You're not allowed to be outside of your house. Why in the world have they done that? I mean, how does that affect the spread? Okay, what is coming? What's about to be announced as we go forward that's being alluded to by Dr. Anthony Fauci? What types of measures are about to get announced? Why is the president having all these conference calls with major retailers who, by the way, are also starting to restrict their hours? Publix now is closing at 8 p.m., and maybe it starts to move that up a little more. We'll have to wait and see what's happening. One reason is they just don't have the stock to meet people's needs. Costco's sold out of many things that people want, and this is true across the country for all retailers. But in Los Angeles, the mayor's closed all entertainment venues, gyms, bars, and restaurants from March 16th to March 31st. Apple closed all of its retail stores through March 27th. New York City has closed its schools finally, which they were really struggling against doing that. You could hear they were saying, we're not going to do that. Now, all of a sudden, they did it over the weekend, but they've closed all bars, nightlife, gyms, and restaurants in New York City except for delivery. Now, think about that. Think about all those people that live in that city who, again, they live in 300-square-foot apartments. They don't have a lot of stuff stored up. They don't have an extra freezer in the garage where they've got meat and chicken and other things. They're used to eating out a lot, eating delivery a lot, and, kind of living hand to mouth. And now they don't have jobs, and they don't have any way to get food, and what is going to happen next? Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.